Three, two, one.
Welcome to another episode of the Happy Hour Podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, we are going to recap the football game that was yesterday. We're going to talk about week five. Are we in five? This is six. Week 6 of the NFL. It's got some interesting games. It's also our first week for bye weeks, which is obviously plays a factor in a lot of different things.
I know. How are you going to live with no Titans game this week?
Don't fucking kill me, man. I don't. Every time I look at that team, I'm just like, I just want to quit. Like, it's just awful. It's just a brutal team. It's upsetting, and I don't really know. I don't know. With that being said, as always, joined by my partner here, Mr. Fox. How are you, buddy?
You know, I'm doing all right. I thought, hey, I can't take another dreadful Thursday night football game, so I'm going to watch highly anticipated film Halloween Kills last night, and I probably would have been better off watching the football game.
I have not been able to catch that quite yet. Which is going to be interesting. I should be able to catch it maybe after this podcast. But if that game wasn't much of a barn burner for you, this coming up Thursday, we have New Orleans versus Arizona, which should be a blast.
At least those teams should put up some points. I mean, the fact that the winning team on Thursday Night Football has posted only 12 points 2 weeks in a row is something
alarming.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Just to look at the quick look ahead at the next couple weeks on Thursday night. New Orleans, Arizona, Baltimore, Tampa Bay. That should be good. I'm looking forward to like Lamar ripping a leg or something, or being out for a week, maybe break, and then it'd be like the Kyle Trask versus the Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, Brady having to take family time so that
exactly
work out his personal life. Yeah,
Philadelphia at Houston the week after that, which
is one good team.
Atlanta versus Carolina.
Holy night!
And then right before the Thanksgiving,
Desmond Ritter.
And then right before the Thanksgiving game, we do have Tennessee at Green Bay. So that's definitely interesting to even look at.
Not saying that's so. I'd be honest. Potentially, Baltimore Tampa Bay is okay, although both those teams at times have struggled putting up points. None of the rest of those games, like Tennessee and Green Bay, have not exactly had stalwart offenses.
Well, hey, if you want me to keep going, here we go. Thursday night, they're actually the Thanksgiving game. The Buffalo at Detroit
game. The Thanksgiving one is on NBC. It's not Amazon.
So Buffalo, Detroit, that should be fun. New York versus Dallas, that'll just be whatever. New England and Minnesota, that's interesting. Back on Prime Video, we have Buffalo at New England, week 13. Las Vegas versus Los Angeles Rams, week 14. San Francisco versus Seattle, week 16. I don't know who the fuck they pissed off, but we've got Jacksonville versus the Giants or the Jets.
But actually, those teams are kind of fun, and that's also Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson, round 2. You know, the top 2 picks. You know what? Given all the other matchups you've read, Jacksonville Jets does not actually sound that bad. Both those teams have been fun and frisky at times.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Speaking of fun and frisky, we got some news and notes. Look, I'm not going to say that I'm the king of the segue, but I'm just saying that was a pretty good segue right there. Because speaking of frisky, Davante Adams shoved a photographer post-game on Sunday night. Was it Sunday night? Monday night? Monday night in a game of which that I couldn't watch, but I did see some highlights of that final play, which I still don't understand why they went for 2 points there.
Not even Josh McDaniels' mother understands.
The thing about it is I know everybody loves to question the analytic part of the world of the atmosphere, but it's crazy because I'm an analytic guy. I believe in analytics. I believe that they work, and I do believe that, so shockingly enough, they're not going to – at times, the analytics are going to be wrong. I don't know if that's, like, really shocking to people, but anytime somebody uses the analytic thing and then it gets it wrong, and then it's the whole – this is, they need to go back to the 1970s where they just flipped the coin. No, that's still analytics. I don't know. But with that being said, it was a questionable play call, especially since The Raiders have been playing good in the second half, but after that final play there where we saw Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow easily became the best tackler for the Chiefs of the game, and they collided. We saw some Devontae Adams get off the field, which the thing about it is what Devontae Adams did was wrong. I also hate the fact that they try to shove cameras and shove things in people's faces immediately after the games. Can you imagine? Like, that's just like, you just had a play where you're trying to beat the best team.
NFL for 10 years. It's not.
Well, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm not saying that he's right by any stretch of the imagination. I still hate that they do that. Yeah, I'm just saying that I hate that they do that to these guys. But with that being said, what he did was wrong, and I don't. The frustration is growing in the Raiders, and the crazy thing about the Raiders is I think they're 1-4, right?
Yeah,
they could be 3-2 right now, like easily. The Raiders game or the Cardinals game.
Russell Wilson said they could be 5-0. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, but they actually should be. They could. They should have.
No, I mean,
they should have beat the Cardinals.
This is 100% what I expect from Josh McDaniels. He's a horrendous coach. He's blown 2 17-point leads. That doesn't shock me. He made possibly the most colossal blunder in the history of time at the end of this game. That doesn't surprise me. He is a horrendous coach. I don't know what they thought they were going to get, but this is what I thought they were going to get. And it's a damn shame for Derek Carr, who I actually like as kind of a guy. And I don't think we have ever seen him get a great shot. And I'm sure it's really sucking for their offense. But now there's misdemeanor charges for Adams. I think that'll ultimately get settled. But I would wager he gets a 1 to 3 game suspension for this because it's a bad look and there's really no excuse for it. So now, from a fantasy standpoint, you're probably missing him for 2 to 4 games because they're on a bye this week. I'm sure that was a real good atmosphere. It's probably good that they get to separate, but it's amazing. We've only played five weeks. They've pretty well played themselves out of playoff contention, even with how the league is going, because they do not have a very easy schedule and they've blown all these winnable opportunities, which again, that was always a hallmark of Josh McDaniels. I have not seen any improvement in him as a coach.
The crazy thing about it is the old adage is true. Some coordinators are great coordinators, and they should be coordinators for like a long time. You know what I mean? And I believe that he deserved a second chance because everybody did. But with that second chance, you would hope to see some sort of improvement, right? You know what I mean? You would hope to see some sort of changes within the system. And I do believe that you hit the nail on the head. You hit this you said this early on, but I really feel like the lack of preseason and these guys playing is really coming back to haunt some of these teams because it's really taken them a while to get their mojo going. And the big thing is, and we've seen this multiple games back-to-back weeks now, where teams that are running the ball very well refuse to run the ball when they could easily get yardage. You know what I mean? If you're in a 3rd and 2 scenario where you have a running back that's averaging 7 yards a carry, give them the ball, especially if you know you're going to go for it on 4th down, right? You know
the Raiders actually played starters during the preseason.
Oh, well, that's embarrassing enough.
Yeah, remember, first game of preseason, they had Josh Jacobs out there in the Hall of Fame game. There was all that talk that he was
that he was done
losing his job, and they played Carr. They played. I mean, Belichick, whatever you would say about him, he has always played starter some in preseason. He has always used preseason to prep for the regular season. McDaniels did all that. The only game that they've won this year is when he ran across a coach that's demonstrably worse than him in Nathaniel Hackett. I'm just being honest. Hackett's is worse. For however I feel about McDaniels, Hackett is worse.
My question to you is the Packers blew the game against the Giants, I believe, because they got away from the run. It's been interesting to see some of these teams really run the ball well, but then forget that they can run my thing is this. There's a few coaches in the NFL that I just believe that shouldn't be head coaches, and Frank Wright is one of them. I will stand by Frank Wright with being one of them. Matt Rule was another, but that time has passed. You know what I mean?
It's too bad McDaniels doesn't get to play against Rule because he would have gotten his second win.
So far, that's two of the coaches that I think of that are making really bonehead decisions. I truly don't believe that. I don't know, why am I blanking on who's the Packers head coach?
It's
Matt LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur, yeah.
I don't believe he's that great of a coach, and well, I don't. And I think that offense is weird. You have one very good one very, very, very good running back. And A.J. Dillon is quite a powerhouse. They might have one of the better 1-2 punches in all of football. And for some reason, they consistently find themselves in later parts of the games not running efficiently, or not running the ball as much as they should. It's like Mike McCarthy's there all over again. It really is. That's the same problem McCarthy had.
You mean McCarthy, who's top 5 for Coach of the Year right now?
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen more than one article writing about him being Coach of the Year, which is this week's sign of the apocalypse.
Well, the thing about it is, I think that just has to go with obviously Cooper Rush. But the thing for me with that Dallas Cowboys team, they're playing incredible defense. The people that are saying that Dak should be benched for Cooper, it blows my mind. It literally blows. They're asking Cooper to play mistake-free football.
The biggest win for the Cowboys this offseason was that Dan Quinn didn't want any of the head coaching jobs he got offered and decided to stay running that defense, because that's really the difference between last year and this year's Cowboys and the teams before, was they're actually getting some good defensive production and playing well. I think Rush is playing fine. I think Dak will probably play fine too. I thought, honestly, that opening Sunday night game, I know Dak gets a lot of grief, but they were playing a great defense in Tampa Bay. They are one of the teams that didn't really play anybody at all in the preseason, so they were working some stuff out. And if you've watched, one of the big changes, and they referenced this after Dak got injured and went out, is, Kellen Moore said, I need to call a more traditional game plan. Well, that makes a lot of sense, because that opening Sunday night, if you were watching it, they were doing triple reverses and running all these. I'm like, Kellen Moore, you're getting a little too cute against a pretty stout defensive front while you're still trying to figure out your offensive line. They figured out the offensive line over a couple of weeks. They're one of the few teams that had major offensive line issues coming into the season that have actually shuffled people around and figured out how to make it work. They've leaned into that running game. I don't think Matt LaFleur is a terrible coach, but Green Bay, I think, as an organization, is one of those, and we've seen this before with Pittsburgh, where we're not going to overpay to keep our players. Everyone is replaceable. And that's both true and not true, as we're seeing. I think they thought their system and their ability to recruit could overcome even the loss of Devontae Adams, but we're seeing that that's not entirely true. Rodgers is doing a pretty decent job of, I've been impressed with the way they've gotten Romeo Doubs going. Randall Cobb looks better than he's looked in years. Lazard's still doing Alan Lazard things. The Christian Watson probably wasn't the right pick, among the options that they had. Sure, hindsight's 2020, but there were a lot of questions about making that selection at the time. Our friend Matt Bruning said that they just basically picked MVS round 2, and that has kind of borne out. He's dropped a few, but the part that doesn't make sense is, I assumed, like you did, if you're going to let an Adams walk and you're going to rebuild the receiving core, they've talked for years about wanting to transition to that more run-heavy offense. I also expected Aaron Jones to get split out in the slot more, to be used as a receiver, because let's be honest, he probably is their best receiver, period, on their team right now. And when we've seen them do those things, like that week 2 game, when they rolled out after being embarrassed in week 1, you saw them power running with Dillon. You saw them running with Aaron Jones. You also saw Aaron Jones catching shovel passes, going out of the slot, catching touchdowns. That's the best their offense has looked, and they've consistently gone away from that. And that's the part where both organizationally, you maybe bought into your system more than was reasonable, and then from a coaching and scheme standpoint, and The other thing to consider, LaFleur has been the play caller, but no one lost more offensive coaches. Hackett went to Denver. He took one of the other offensive coaches, Justin Outen, who's Denver's offensive coordinator. Luke Getsy, who was also one of their big coordinators, is in Chicago. And we may laugh because those offenses don't look like they're going well. But having a veteran staff and cohesion and the experience, that's a lot to replace. Not everyone is Buffalo, where they were able to transition from Brian Daboll, who was a hell of a coach when he was there, and as we've seen with the Giants, is a hell of a coach, period, to Ken Dorsey without missing a beat. Not everyone can do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's just, I feel like you're right. Like what the game plan is, and the few times that they've decided to put Jones and Dillon in the backfield, I think that's worked too. It's like diversify your offense, but that run game is a lot better than what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason why we shouldn't see a more balanced approach. I feel like you should see more of that, that Terrell Davis, John Elway-esque last couple of seasons where, you kind of, it's not to say Rodgers is toast or anything like that, because obviously he's not, but we're not seeing Jones carry or touch the ball nearly as much as he should be. Because he is just an electric back. I mean, he just is. Like he's averaging 6.4 yards a carry this year. That's absurd. That's a really good number. You know what I mean? 6.4 yards a carry is very, very good. And it blows my, and then of course he's averaging 7 yards a catch. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Get him more involved. I think that he should have 20 touches a game. You also paid him. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. But, just to quickly recap last night's game, it was a game. A team won, and I couldn't watch live football basically for a week, and I still haven't watched live football since I've been back. So,
yeah, the backfield
Justin Fields sucks. I'm sorry. I blame some of the pieces around him. I blame them not surrounding him with better talent. I do. And maybe he needs to grow more, and he can still grow. But he is struggling with the internal clock. And if you can't fix that, and I know it's because he's on his ass a lot, but I don't know. There's been flashes, but he has not been very good at decision making.
Their line is poor. Their scheme is poor. He's one of these quarterbacks that now gets a different offensive coordinator and scheme every year. When N'Keal Harry coming off IR improves the weapons you have at your disposal, that should tell you all you need to know about the offense. And still, they would have won that game if the receiver holds onto the ball.
I agree 100%. I also think it wasn't a very good pass either.
He's doing the best that he can in that situation. I'm not sure exactly what Chicago is trying to do. I have felt like they're playing for 2023 because they've been stockpiling cap and draft picks for the offseason, which might mean that they're just kind of rolling the dice. This is another coaching staff that I don't have a lot of faith in. I don't think actually either coaching staff is great that we saw last night. I know you were impressed that Ron Rivera sort of had some fire at the post-game press conference, and I will agree that was probably good.
But you made a solid point, though.
But he started this whole thing. I mean, if you watched, he got asked, what's the difference between your teams? And his one-word answer was quarterback. And then he followed up. And I will give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he didn't mean exactly to throw Carson under the bus and was trying to say that we, haven't had a franchise quarterback to build around, except if you're talking about your division, Jalen Hurts is the guy that Carson Wentz got tossed over for. So that's a direct shot. Daniel Jones, everyone has had questions about Daniel Jones before this year. Yeah, and still may not have incredible answers. And in Dallas, Dak is not the quarterback you're talking about with the Cowboys right now. It's Cooper Rush, a guy who came off the bench and has been fantastic. So you can't take that any way but a shot. And then, of course, Wentz responded to what he did. He tried to walk it back, but that just shows you we're only in the beginning of October, and this team is already fragmenting. I don't really understand what's going on with Antonio Gibson. Brian Robinson looks fine. Gibson looked fine when they gave him carries. They're not really giving him touches. They're talking about him returning kicks. I thought the only one that would be a stable start is J.D. McKissick, which, of course, that bit me in the hindquarters because the guy who's your pass catching specialist didn't get a single target in the game. So good job, Washington. Dotson was out. They have struggled figuring out how to get Terry McLaurin involved in the offense. Before last night, at least Curtis Samuel was pretty rock solid in his role, but now doesn't appear to have a role.
Well, he did drop 2 big passes, though.
I know, but
one was a touchdown.
Washington, the other thing is this was the only decent defensive game Washington's had all season.
See, and that's the thing. So this is the thing. 2 years ago, this defense was really good at football.
Yeah.
Something happened. And I also don't believe Ron Rivera is a great coach. I don't think he is. I think
the NFC East got better.
Well, that's that too. The thing about it is I understand it is very, very easy to blame Carson Wentz. Okay? I know it is. If we look back of last year, we're starting to see Carson Wentz wasn't the only issue for this Colts team. Still think it's Frank Wright. Still think he deserves to be fired, but we're not talking about them right now. Well, I'm going to go back to the Commanders here. I don't think Ron Rivera is a good coach. I don't think he's a great head coach. He's a good coach. He's not a great head coach. Let me rephrase that. The defenses look terrible. They looked great last night, but I think anybody's looking great against this Bears team right now. The Bears are god awful. Carson Wentz has approximately 0 seconds to throw the football. That offensive line is god awful. Last night was some of the worst offensive line play I think I've ever seen in an NFL game. Like, both these quarterbacks were on their back almost every single play. And I'm not saying Wentz has been good, because there's at times he's looked good, and that's just what he does. If he has time to throw the football, he's a capable quarterback. But also, I think that he might be like Darnold and sees the ghost. But by the time you're getting shoved in the dirt 45 times, it's really hard to really kind of get motivated. And again, this running back situation in Washington makes 0 sense to me. Gibson is your best back. I'm sorry, he is. He's your best back. He should be your bell cow. And I do think McKissick is a very underutilized back, which I still wish to this day he would have signed with Buffalo, because I think that he could have been a game changer in that offense as the pass catching back. And I have him on one of my big dynasty leagues, and I was so excited when I saw that, and then it just flopped heavily. We got a question here real quick. Traded away Hollywood and Pollard for CD and Najee. How we feeling? You're muted.
It's kind of hard to figure out how that works without more details.
I mean, if it's just a redraft, I mean, CD for Hollywood, Najee for Pollard. I mean, I like it, obviously.
I don't know. So in Dynasty, for sure, Lamb and Harris. But in redraft, Pittsburgh's offensive line, Najee Harris has not been an incredibly reliable play. I actually benched him in a couple of spots for like Melvin Gordon, which tells you about how I'm feeling right now. And Pollard does seem to be getting a lot of touches. So kind of depends on the construction of your league. I do think with DeAndre Hopkins coming back, Hollywood Brown may have his role take a hit.
I agree. All right. We're going to transition into Matt's games of the week.
So we have yet another week, this time probably likely due to bye weeks, where we only have 3 late window games. This has become a common pattern. But fortunately, we do have possibly one of the best games of the week or the season in the late window, so at least we have that going for us. But among the early games, I'm going to highlight the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 2-3, heading to play the 2-1 Indianapolis Colts. When last these teams met, the Jaguars were ascending. A 24-0 home victory seemed to put them on the path toward being a frisky contender. They followed that up by blasting the Chargers, but then have lost 2 games in a row and are now slumping coming into this second matchup between the teams. The Colts have not fared well against the Jaguars. That 24-0 loss was probably the low point of their season. Since then, they've rallied a little bit. They beat the Broncos and they beat the Chiefs to get to 2-2-1. They're actually doing a pretty good job. They have a chance with a win here to move back into first place in their division. The Jaguars, on the flip side, with a win here, have a chance to move back into position to possibly contend. It'll be interesting to see if the Colts have figured out some of their Jaguar-related issues. The Sunday late game, the 4-1 Buffalo Bills traveled to take on the 4-1 Kansas City Chiefs. That was what I was talking about. This is probably the best game of the week, maybe one of the best games of the season. The last few Bills-Chiefs matchups have been incredible. This is the first time these teams are meeting since that memorable divisional round game where Josh Allen did not even get a chance to touch the football in overtime, and the Chiefs were able to advance. Buffalo has looked like a juggernaut this season. They actually could easily be 5-0. Their one loss, a kind of curious close loss to the Miami Dolphins. The Chiefs have looked really good at times and have struggled a little bit at times. They have that curious loss to the Colts. They were a little too close to the Raiders, actually trailing 17-0 at one point for comfort. Mahomes and Kelsey are great. The rest of the Chiefs' offense is a work in progress. I'm looking forward to seeing these two clash in Kansas City. The Sunday night game, also pretty incredible. The 4-1 Dallas Cowboys travel to Philadelphia to take on the 5-0 Eagles. This is a battle for the top of the NFC East. It looks like Cooper Rush is going to play again. Can he move to 5-0 on the season, 6-0 for his career? Or will he get that elusive first loss? Can the Eagles, the NFL's only undefeated team, remain undefeated? This actually looks like a real winner. The Sunday night football games have been pretty great of late, with the exception of one mile-high meltdown by the 49ers. So I think this game should be pretty good. Upsets, there are a lot of weird games on the schedule this week, but my upset that I'm going with is the 2-3 Seahawks over the 2-3 Cardinals. I'm not even sure the Cardinals should be favored on the road in Seattle. They have not looked incredible. Seattle's offense is a lot more fun than you think. I'm actually starting Geno Smith in a lot of places. I'm sure no one is happier about that than our friend John Hamlers, but I'm picking Geno Smith to get to 3-3 and fall off a cliff Kingsbury to see his team drop to 2-4.
Transition to start and sit.
Got to get the dance going.
Got to get the dance going. I am going to kick it off with our start and sit segment here. My must starts of the week. I really like Russell Wilson this week. I don't know why, other than I'm just begging myself to jump off a cliff.
You're punking me. That's why you're punking me.
I'm not punking you. Definitely not doing that. I think Jacoby Brissett had some time. He looked pretty good against this team. I think that, and then you had Davis Mills, who looked pretty formidable against this defense as well. That this Chargers team is banged up. I like Russell Wilson to throw at least a pair of touchdowns, maybe 250 and 2 touchdowns this week. I think he's going to be a formidable start this week. I just like him against this Chargers defense, who is banged up and hurt a little bit. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a high-scoring game, back and forth battle. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Broncos win that, which would hurt my heart.
I picked the Broncos, so you're welcome.
Because I love Justin Herbert. But talking about coaches that I'm not sure are good right there, we'll come back on him at some point. But he
isn't. Andy Reid lucked out because there's a lot of talent in the AFC West, but there is not any coaching prowess.
My running back start of the week is Breece Hall. We're starting to see him get fluctuated into that offense more and more each week. I like what we've seen from him so far. Michael Carter, RIP, my friend. You'll still be relevant in some aspects, but I don't know if he's a startable asset that much unless you're in deep fantasy leagues. Devin Duvernay, I think that he's going to be in for a big week. I like him a lot this week. This Giants team sucks against the pass. They do. They deep threats are a thing that really kind of affect their team. I do think that Lamar Jackson's going to throw and nobody's going to stop him. And Duvernay is going to have a big week. Gerald Everett is my start at the tight end position. Broncos are pretty good against the tight end, but I like Gerald Everett to at least find the end zone this week. Bounce back from the god-awful game that he had last week. That was very hard to watch just as a big-time fan of Mr. Everett. Should I trade? We got a question real quick before we go to your starts. Should I trade Chubb and Devontae for Debo, Mixon, AJ, and Marquise?
I need him to fill out more names because I'm not entirely sure who all.
Are we talking about AJ Brown?
And are you talking about Devontae Adams? Are you talking about Devontae Parker? Because
and then can we find out if this is redraft or not? Just if you can let us know redraft, and can you let us know Devontae Adams? Nope, AJ Brown. Okay, so let us. Is this redraft or Devontae Adams? And here we go. Here we go. We got one more question to get answered. Here we go. Yeah, no redraft. No redraft.
So it is redraft.
So it is redraft. Or
I think Devontae Adams is about to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. I mean,
are you going to start Debo, Mixon, and AJ weekly is the real question. Like, that's the big question, because Chubb is a beast, but.
And also, who are you having to drop? Because if you're trading 2 for 4, usually. Like, how many are starting? How many? I guess I think Marquise Brown's probably going to see his production slide. AJ Brown's a little interesting, too. We've seen a big game, but we've also seen the pass volume isn't incredible. Jalen Hurts only has 4 passing touchdowns on the year. He's had a lot of rushing touchdowns. So, like, him in fantasy is fine. The receivers, they're trying to keep 3 receivers relevant and a running back there. Debo, I feel the same way. He gets a lot of opportunities. It's kind of a toss-up. Chubb is the best player, honestly, in that deal for redraft. So you're giving away the best player, and it really is going to depend on what the rest of your running back core is, because the Bengals' offensive line issues, I think, have taken more of a toll on Mixon than they have even on Burrow in the pass offense. So that's, to me, would be a pretty sizable drop-off.
I say no. And even if you lose Devontae, let's just say for 1 or 2 games, I still think that Chubb is just too great of a factor.
Yeah. It really depends on what the rest of your roster is and what your options are going to be at wide receiver, because if losing Devontae Adams for 3 weeks, Fournette, Montgomery. So you have 1 running back. So Fournette and Mixon would not be leaving me feeling great, especially if I think the Debo side, a lot of those guys are going to be incredibly boom bust. So that's the risk you're running, and you probably can't start all of them when you're doing a 2 for 4 deal unless the rest of your team is incredibly poor. My fear would be I make that trade and then consistently have the wrong person on my bench.
I have D-Hop and Devontae on bench. I have Romeo Doubs and Amari starting this week.
So
yeah, with D-Hop coming back. I mean, you have D-Hop coming back. I
like Amari Cooper to start more than anyone on the other side, except for I would probably start Cooper and Debo. But I'm not incredibly sold on AJ Brown's consistent volume.
And you have D-Hop coming back too, even with the suspension from he's got DeAndre Hopkins.
So I don't know why you'd want Marquise Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, because that would always be a frustration to me about which one I'm putting in.
I say no to the deal.
Yeah.
Especially now knowing your roster structure. I'd say you stay in pat with Chubb and Devontae, because
my guess would be you played Montgomery already this week.
So if you get Chubb and Fournette as your starting running backs, your receivers, Dobbs and Amari, I mean, you get, even with Devontae's suspension, you're getting D-Hop. And then after the Devontae suspension, you still have D-Hop and Devontae. So, and then you have D-Hop, Devontae, Dobbs, and Amari. So I say stand pat. What are your starts this week, Fox?
So my starts this week, my quarterback start is Geno Smith. I know we all made jokes about Geno Smith being named starter, but he is QB7 on the season. It is a rough quarterback landscape, but he's been consistently delivering. I'm firing him up against the Cardinals, who you also saw I picked as my upset of the week. My running back start is Jeff Wilson. When the 49ers lost Elijah Mitchell to injury, it seemed like it was going to be a blow to the offense. But since week 3, Jeff Wilson is RB13 in fantasy at a position that's been decimated by injuries and now bye weeks. He has a chance to be good, especially going up against the Atlanta Falcons. I think he could be a top 12 play this week. My wide receiver start is Cortland Sutton. Apparently both of us are going to the Denver Bronco. Well, I get it. Their offense has not been a lot of fun to watch, but Sutton, who I have long believed is the best receiver on the Broncos roster, has looked like it in 2022. Despite all their struggles, he is wide receiver 12 through 5 weeks. He's been incredibly consistent, and I think he is going to be consistent once again in what could end up being a higher scoring game against the Chargers. Tight end start. Tight end is kind of a garbage position outside of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. It's hard to feel incredibly confident about the volume anyone's going to get, but I'm going with David Njoku. He has seemed to get regular targets in the Browns offense. He's tight end 8 on the season. I am rolling him out.
What about your sits for the week?
So my sits for the week, my quarterback sit is Jameis Winston. He's limited in practice. It's questionable if he's definitely going to return to the lineup, but even if he does, he's not in my lineup. We wondered if we were going to get the kind of Jameis Winston that was a top 5 fantasy asset with the Buccaneers, or the one that threw 30 interceptions and ended up playing himself out of a starting job. So far, it's been more of the latter. Even in Superflex, I'm not betting on him. My sit is James Robinson for the Jaguars. I know you're probably wondering what gives. He looked incredible to start the season. He's still RB16 overall in the season, but the past 2 weeks, he is just RB63, and we've seen Travis Etienne getting more touches and showing more signs of production. It could be just a temporary blip on the radar, but I'm a little unsure of this backfield right now. Robinson's early production was buoyed a lot by some big plays and touchdowns. So right now I don't feel confident starting him. My sit at receiver is Juju Smith-Schuster for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been solid. They're 4-1. They look like a playoff and title contender. But outside of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, there has not been a lot of reliable consistency in fantasy. Juju scored 11.9 points in week 1, but he has just 45.7 points in PPR through 5 weeks. He's wide receiver 50. You're just not sure what the volume is going to be for these receivers in production. Unless he gets a touchdown, it's hard for him to make the day for you. So he is out of my lineup. And then at tight end, I'm sitting Irv Smith Jr. When it comes to the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and Kirk Cousins have been incredible, but they also have Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, and Smith, and they've mixed them in at times, but they're all incredibly boom bust. He's tight end 18 on the season. If he got a touchdown, that would be great for you, but there is no sure lock he's getting a touchdown, so Irv Smith is not a reliable starting option to me.
My sits of the week, I actually have James Robinson as well. I just that running back situation is murky at best. I'm sitting Jalen Waddle again this week just because I just don't buy that offense at all. I still think Tyreek is not going to produce the numbers that he normally does, but at least Tyreek is getting the catches in a PPR league. You know what I mean? Versus what Waddle's
You're not on the Skylar Thompson train.
Disappeared. I don't even know who the hell Skylar Thompson is. I do, but I don't. But I don't care to know who he is either. But tight ends, I don't really care about tight ends. But my tight end sit of the week is Taysom Hill. If you're expecting him to do what he did last week, you're going to be let down poorly. I'm sorry. And I love Taysom Hill for Matthew Fox and Matthew Fox only. My sit of the week is going to be the polar opposite of Matthew Fox. So this will be an interesting battle for me. I'm sitting Geno Smith this week. The Cardinals have only given up 3 touchdown passes since the week 1 torching by Mr. Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that I don't see Geno getting 2 touchdown passes this week. I don't see it happening, and I think that's what you would kind of need from him. I think this is actually going to be a relatively low scoring game. I don't know why. Like I said, I have a hunch on this one. I don't like Geno. Matthew Fox is a hell of a lot smarter than I am, so probably go with his decision. But if I'm right, I'm definitely going to throw it in his face next week just because that's what I would do. I mean, Matthew Fox loves me for that. And then if I'm wrong, I'm going to be like, I don't remember what you're talking about. It never happened. So no.
We'll see. I didn't feel good about anything.
This week is very ugly. It's just an ugly week. It's
Well, and the 4 teams on a bye aren't what you would call like necessarily great NFL teams.
no.
They have been good fantasy teams. You're missing some big fantasy chunks every
Yeah,
year.
my entire roster is missing all the Titans players. So no, but you are right though. Like the Lions have been vast fantasy producers. The Raiders have been fantasy producers in certain aspects. The Titans, obviously, in certain aspects, and then of course you have the Texans. So, which is you have Damian Pierce right there, and even Cooks. You know what I mean? Cooks is in your lineup. So
you mentioned the Cardinals. I will say, Derek Carr, 252 yards and 2 passing touchdowns against the Cardinals.
I'm telling you, and Geno Smith isn't as good. I don't know what it is. I'm telling you, it's just a hunch. You could be 100% right.
Geno Smith has been better this year.
Well,
Derek Carr.
I think they've schemed very well, which is something you can't even be mad about. But
It's
all
shocking.
right.
All it took for the Seahawks to figure out how to make a quarterback achieve their potential was for Russell Wilson to leave.
Wow. And he has looked like something. All right, folks. Last week, I came back down to earth just a little bit. I went 3-2-1 on my picks. Obviously, the Steelers couldn't muster a touchdown if their life depended on it, and Trevor Lawrence turned into Blake Bortles, causing me my 2 losses. I did waver on my Seahawks pick. I did have faith in the Seahawks to cover the spread at 7. I had it at 7.5 at first, and then I changed it to 7, which I'm extremely upsetting because it would have been a win if I would have kept it at 7.5, but I pushed there. Two of my big wins of the week were Aaron Rodgers over 1.5 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs only caught, I think, 2 passes in that game, and the one went over the 18.5 yards, the longest reception, which was beautiful. And as I mentioned on the show, the Cardinals covered against the Eagles. Matthew Fox didn't have faith in me, but I had faith in my pick. It did come down to the wire a little bit. Overall in the season, 12-6-2. Not bad. Not bad at all. I'm liking where I'm at with this right now. This week, I have another massive slate of games to talk to you about. So, Aaron Rodgers over 1.5 touchdown passes. Again, look, the juice is a little bit high. -180. You're basically going to get 55 cents on the dollar. I love this. He is literally the 4 straight weeks where we've seen him go over the double-digit touchdown passes after hitting that 0 in week 1. This team's going to continue to find its rhythm. I like for him to get over that total against the Jets. Vikings over 2.5 touchdowns versus the Dolphins. Okay, the Vikings have scored 4 touchdowns in 3 straight games. They're taking on a reeling Dolphins team that has given up 67 points in their last 2 games. This seemed to me like a low number for them to go 2.5 touchdowns total. I like this a whole lot. The Ravens tied the Bengals at the half last week, but have won every other first half this year. I like them to do that this week against the New York Giants, who are surprisingly like the best team in football now, apparently. I don't know. I like the Ravens -1.5 at the half against the Giants. Speaking of wide receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs, I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling to go over 45.5 yards. He's seen 5 or more targets in 4 straight games. He's hit this number 3 straight games. This is a very good matchup for him. I think this could be a shootout. Obviously, you got Bills Chiefs. Knowing our luck in this year, it might be a 10-7 football game. Who knows? But I like MVS to go over the 45.5 yard prop. I think it just seems right around the number that he's been targeting. I like this one a lot. MVS has been a little bit more consistent than some of the other receivers on this roster. Give me the Cowboys +7.5 against the Eagles. I think the Cowboys have the defense to contain Hurts. I think the Cowboys will probably make Hurts try to beat them with his arm. Not saying he can't. I think this game's close. The Cowboys have covered in 10 of their last 11 home games. My lock of the week, which is absurd to me that this number is so low, you can get the Dallas Cowboys over 1.5 touchdowns versus the Eagles. 1.5. They still have to score 2 touchdowns. 2. That's it. 2. That's it. 2 touchdowns. You're telling me the Cowboys aren't going to score 2 touchdowns against the Eagles? I don't care if Troy overrated Aikman comes out of retirement and he could easily score 2 touchdowns with this offense. So I like the Cowboys over 2 touchdowns. Recap real quick: Ravens minus 1.5 at the end of the half. Rodgers over 1.5 touchdowns. Vikings over 2.5 touchdowns. Marquez Valdez-Scantling over 45.5 yards. Cowboys plus 7.5. And my lock of the week is Cowboys over 1.5 touchdowns. Fox, what do you think?
I picked the Cowboys and the Broncos this week, so I hope that you will, respect my privacy during this difficult time period.
Wait, so you picked the Cowboys?
I did.
Oh, fuck. The Eagles are going to win by 50. Shit. No, I'm kidding.
You know what? Fine. Sometimes I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal when I pick the Cowboys. I wish I knew how to quit them.
That's us. That's been us 2 years in a row. It really has been. Like last year, I was determined not to go back to the Cowboys. And I went back and I didn't have them winning division. I didn't have them winning the division. I did have the Eagles, but I did having them being in contention there. And I was like, after Jack went down, I was like, well, there goes the Cowboys again. And then here we are. You know what I mean? We're sitting pretty. You know what I mean? What can we say?
I know every week I think, I'm not going to pick them. And then I look at it and I don't know. Jerry Jones like whispers in my ear and talks me into it. I don't know. I really went back and forth about both that game and the Monday Night Football game because I have a love-hate relationship with the Broncos right now as well. But in the end, I'm like, I don't know if it's the fan group. So I'll just be honest. There's been this theory that's been floated. When Peyton Manning came to the Broncos, they started out 2-3, and week 6 they played the Chargers on Monday Night Football and blew them out, and it was the start of like a playoff run. And a lot of people have been talking about this whole thing has just been setting up to that. And even though I'm not sure I totally believe that, I want to believe, much like Fox Mulder, I want to believe. So I did it. I went with the double D to end my picks for the week, and I'm 39-40 on the season, and I think this is a large reason why.
I looked at it. It's funny to me. So the biggest problem I have with the weekly spread picks that we do, I hate the spreads that they have on ESPN because they don't match the spreads with DraftKings. Sometimes they're a point and a half higher, and I'm like, I really don't like this bet, but I don't really know what side of it. I just click, I just go back to the old school. I Christmas tree it. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. With that being said, make sure to follow Matthew Fox over on the Twitter at Nighthawk7734 at Ricky Valero _. We're going to transition over to our favorite segment of the show. We're going to quickly dissect the movie corner. Big weekend of releases. We have Halloween Ends in theaters on Peacock, Rosalind on Hulu, I Love You, You Hate Me over on Peacock, Shantrum starts on Apple TV Plus, and then The Curse of Bridge Hollow is also something that is dropping on Netflix, which I know Matthew Fox is excited to watch.
I still will watch it. I haven't seen Shantrum yet, but I did watch the other two movies. I watched Rosalind this morning. We actually had a nice review on the site that dropped on Tuesday from Dan Moss. I thought that one, I'll be honest, it's like a comedy retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I was prepared to dislike it with every fiber of my being, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It was actually charming and delightful, which is more than I can say for Halloween Ends.
I'm sad I haven't watched it yet. I think I've been wrapped up watching Love is Blind season 3. Don't judge me, okay? Don't judge me. Literally one of my favorite shows to watch. I can't say much else about it right now because it doesn't come out till Wednesday. You have to, first off, you have like the first 4 drop Wednesday, the next 3 drop the Wednesday after that, and then the next 3 drop the Wednesday after that, and then you have the season finale, which I'm very upset with because I haven't seen those 2 episodes. I've seen the first 10 episodes of season 3, but they didn't send me 11 and 12. I'm sure for spoiler purposes, which I understand 100%, but please, I'm already hooked. Give me the deets. I won't tell anything what happened. Just please, for the love of God, just tell me what the hell's going to happen. With that being said, I haven't really watched a whole lot otherwise. Game of Thrones last week, really enjoyed the episode. The guy that's playing the king, I can't think of his name right now.
Paddy Considine.
Patty, he's been incredible. I felt like that was a really good farewell episode to him. He was incredible in the episode. I thought it was really good. We're setting up for the final 2 episodes, right? Yep, final 2 episodes of the series. And I'm excited because I feel like maybe we're finally going to get some really strong action. There's one shocking scene in that episode that I was like, holy shit, that was awesome. And like, it was freaking awesome. You know, Matthew Smith continues to be the best part of that show. And it's sometimes he's even the best part of the show when he doesn't even fucking talk. And that's incredible to me.
I know why they structured the way they did. They're really interested in telling one specific story, which we're kind of up to. But the massive time jumps and constantly changing a number of the actors,
it's been hard.
It's been brutal, in addition to the fact that they didn't, in my opinion, achieve their aims of making you care about the characters. They're pretty well all universally unlikable to me at this point in time.
Damien's not unlikable. How dare you suggest that he's an unlikable human being?
I think he's completely unlikable. I mean,
I'm kidding. I mean, obviously,
an incestuous pedophile is the one you're gonna plant your flag on. Batman would be appalled. You're gonna have to take that shirt off. Alan Sepinwall at the beginning of the season had one of the comments that he made that has stuck with me as I've wrestled with how I feel about the show is he said there were a number of interesting characters. Unfortunately, the show decided not to focus on any of the interesting ones and focus on the boring ones instead. And that's kind of been true. I liked the younger version of these actresses and they started having like a friendship, but then when they flipped, it's not that Emma D'Arcy and Olivia Cook aren't decent performers, but they have like zero relationship. And it seemed like they were going to kind of go back to having some kind of a friendship, but that that's like 2 minutes. There's been too much whiplash and too much movement.
Time jump is
as
annoying.
Much as we criticized Game of Thrones for moving sometimes at a glacial pace, the reason they moved at a glacial pace at times would be like the first season. I didn't care very much about Jon Snow. I didn't really care very much about where it was going, and by the end of the show, he's my ride or die. Spent time investing in these people.
So and that's the thing. It felt rushed. Like we actually had like they already got renewed for a season 2 before it even started. So it was like I really wish they would have spent like Millie Alcock was brilliant. Like she was my favorite.
Yeah, it's a shame
those
two younger actresses didn't get like.
We could have let her grow into more of a woman, I guess you could say, within, as if you let her do the entire season 1 and do a jump into season 2, by the time you fill it and stuff like that. We got makeup, you know what I mean?
Well, you could have done what The Crown did. I mean, that's essentially, if you're going to do this, and I know that they want to tell the Dance of Dragons timeline, which is basically the Civil War, but they wanted you to know why, what the familial connection and relationships over years were that led to the Civil War. So I'm sure there was a debate about, do we just jump into this Dance of Dragons Civil War timeline, start with the death of the king, or do we need to build these people up? You could have done what The Crown did and do 1 or 2 seasons building these younger characters and younger relationships. I mean, the compression of everything just seems patently ridiculous. You end, episode 6, which I basically was like the Call the Midwife version of House of Dragons, where it's all childbirths and paternity tests, with Daemon's wife getting set on fire. You open the next episode with her funeral and you spend like 20 or 30 minutes like literally at that funeral gathering, and then you must have bounced through some months of time, because I've read the wiki of A Song of Ice and Fire, and when Rhaenyra and Daemon get married, it's quick, but it's like it was only about 6 months after the death of her husband. Well, in this, it was less than 30 seconds after the death of her husband, and you're like, oh, her relationship with her mother-in-law isn't great. Well, both of her kids like died in the span of 40 minutes of screen time. It's just,
It's been a lot. It's
They've
been a lot.
treated this entire first season like the way they treated season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, and that was like a huge criticism. Was you took mountains of plot and time and you just condensed it into like a matter of minutes, or you kind of, to take a Seinfeld term, yada 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 over huge swaths of time and action, and it doesn't work because now you don't have, like, we are supposed to be really invested in not only Rhaenyra and Alicent, but their children, which is the big focus of Dance of Dragons. And we have changed those actors every episode for like 3 episodes. It's not happening.
Yeah, it's been kind of rough to watch, and that's kind of like that part of me. That's the part that has been very frustrating, and to me, that's part of why, like, some of it, like, I'm still invested. I'm still very intrigued at what happens and all that stuff. But I will also agree that I'm frustrated with how that turnaround's kind of been.
Meanwhile, Otto and Daemon must be vampires because they look exactly the same as episode 1 30 years later.
It is pretty funny to see some of the characters who aren't changing to be like these, just, they're the same human beings now. It's funny to me. I like it a lot. With that being said, folks, that's it for this episode. We will be back next week, more than likely on Thursday, with our normal slot. This week, we're just a little bit altered. Let's win some football games. I hope I win all of my fantasy football games, which is something that I've yet to do this year. I don't even know why I play every year anymore. I feel like I suck at it. But I am pretty good at sports betting, so that's also good. So that's what you should do weekly. You should listen to Matthew Fox when he talks fantasy football. Listen to me when we sports bet, and listen to both of us when we talk about movies, because we both love movies, and we're pretty much in line 85-90% of the time when it comes to those. So make sure to follow us on Twitter, and go Chargers.
Russell Wilson, I'm ready to get hurt again.